What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our prize picks preview for round one of the Sony Open. Going to break down Waialae Country Club, the venue for this week, to give you an idea of what to expect from playing conditions. We'll go through the weather, and then of course what all of you guys are here for, our top four picks for round one contest. And it's a good one. I think the weather is going to play a huge edge, and usually when that happens, or when we're able to go out there and profit the most. Golf is unpredictable, we know that, but when we get an external force like high winds, which we're going to see here for Thursday's round, it could help sway a lot of scores in one direction or the other. So it's usually to our benefit, but let's start with just a look at the overall course, which again is Waialae Country Club, a short par 70 that plays well under par. Last year's winner got to 23 under. That was in a playoff Hideki Matsuyama over a Russell Henley. And last year, in terms of your field average, everyone in the field, it played to an average of 2 under par, which for a par 70 means the average for the field was 68 strokes, which is exceptionally low regardless of the venue that you're at. In terms of your fairway and driving accuracy percentages, you had a 66.3% driving accuracy, which is just higher than 9 fairways, 9.2, 9.3 fairways, but something to consider is that the fringes, the intermediate cuts on these fairways are counted as a fairway hit. That's at least per data golf. So these percentages are typically a little bit higher than what they actually are in reality. So at least per my projections, I'm projecting for right around 9.1, 9.2 fairways per round. In terms of your GIR percentage, the same thing applies. If you end up hitting the intermediate cut or the fringe of a green, that is going to be counted as a green in regulation. So rather than right around a 75.2% clip, they're hit at Waialae, historically at least, right around a 71% clip. So when you're looking at the GIR board, it's actually well under 13 greens per average that are going to be hit here. And if you count for weather, like we're going to see here tomorrow, there's quite a few unders you could take there for GIR too. So we'll talk about these a little bit later, a little bit more extensively when we get to the actual prize picks board into each stat category individually. But relatively high numbers, you can see a little bit above average when it comes to driving accuracy, 7% higher than average when it comes to your green regulation percentage there than your average tour event. That's why a lot of the scoring is as low as you see there with -2. In terms of your wind for Thursday is going to be a huge topic of debate. You have a few sites saying one thing, a few saying another, so we're going to go through a few wind sources here to give you a full picture of what the weathermen are predicting there. So this is Windfinder, which is the one I use the most here on the channel. It's the one I rely on the most, and they're calling for pretty severe winds in the area now. You can see right around like 20 miles an hour. 18 mile an hour wind gusts down there all the way in until Thursday morning. And you can see it ends right around like 8 a.m. is when it starts to taper down a little bit. And you can see it's still around there at 11, but by 2, it's down to 9 miles an hour of sustained wind. So a whole 6 mile an hour difference. And same thing with the wind gusts, right around 7 mile an hour drop off. So the PM wave in this model looks like it's going to play significantly easier than what you see there in the morning wave, which is perhaps a little bit backwards to what we're used to seeing on tour. You go over here to Willie weather, they have it coming out a little bit differently. So here at 5 a.m., they have it at 16 miles an hour of sustained winds, so very on par with what you see at Windfinder. The difference is when you look at the middle of the day, right? So they have it still right around 14 miles an hour at midday, which is actually higher, or maybe consistent with what you saw with the Windfinder model. But in the afternoon, they don't have it dropping off. They have it at right around 12.8 at 2 p.m. At 5 p.m., when these players are going to be getting towards the end of the PM wave there, at least in local time, it's 12.8 miles an hour as well. So it's not really dropping off. You're not seeing that sort of change there, which is a little bit worrisome to me. Like I mentioned, we're hoping that's going to drop off in the afternoon, particularly if you're going to want to take overs for the players in the afternoon. So there's a little bit of sketchiness there. I don't know if it's actually going to get all that much better. Go over here to the Windy app. They do have it just like Windfinder does. So you can see today, they have the winds getting a little bit worse as the day goes on. You can see there in the morning, it's still relatively windy right around 8 a.m. But right around 11 a.m., you can see they have it getting a little bit better. It goes down to 16 miles an hour of wind gusts, and then down to 8.7 there by 2 p.m. So they have it dropping off just like a Windfinder does. So again, depending on what wind source you're looking at, AccuWeather tends to agree with Willie weather. They have the winds staying relatively high throughout the entire day. But again, there's countless other sources that are agreeing with the wind dropping off. So what am I doing, right? I want to give you guys the full perspective. I'm assuming one of both things could happen, right? It could drop off or it couldn't. I just don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm relying on those PM guys. Like, they have to get me to like 5 birdies. I'm assuming that it's easy, so they have to get me to those 15 greens of regulation. We're going to talk about a few props that I like, and it'll make a little bit more sense there. We want to account for it being horrible in the morning. Every model agrees that you're going to have 15 to 20 miles an hour in the morning. That's the actionable data that I think gives us the huge edge there. Over here, even worse winds, right? 16 miles an hour of sustained winds. The windy app right here in the morning, 20 mile an hour wind gust, 16, 15 miles an hour of sustained winds. That's nothing to scoff at. That is going to cause absolute havoc for these players. This 2 under par average isn't going to look anything like that. It's probably going to play at best maybe like 1 under par. It might even play over par. Not even kidding. It might play that difficult in the morning wave. Looking at the driving accuracy, it'd be a little bit lower. The greens regulation would be drastically lower than what you're used to seeing there. So everything is going to be affected with this win tomorrow, and just something we're going to have to keep in mind hopping into the prize picks board right now. So before we hop into our plays, I'll remind you that all of them are posted on my Patreon page. So over here, you can see the write-up. I have the averages, weather, all of the props I'm taking, all of the links to the weather pages, so on and so forth, prop write-ups, how I'm structuring my cards, all of that on here on Patreon page. So if you're looking for access to every prop I'm taking, make sure to check out the Patreon. There's a link in the description of the video, one-stop shop to find everything that I'm doing. But little plug aside, let's talk about these props. So we're going to start with birdies are better, not the birdie or better matchup board, where these are my favorite props. There's actually 4 or 5 of them that have been taken off the board. I had a Russell Knox under. I also had a Webb Simpson under I was taking. Both of those were pulled from the prop board, but we still got Bazane Hoot and Stewart Cink left, and among a few others that you could take the under on. The thing is, both of these players are going off in the AM wave, which typically would be the advantageous wave, but for all the reasons that we just outlined, it's going to be really dicey tomorrow morning. And they're at a 4.5 birdie or better average. Now, you can't see it over here in Data Golf, but it's something I've compiled here. Look at the average. The birdie or better average is 3.60. So like to the dot, birdies are better per round. Now, these players are a little bit better than your average player. I'd say Stewart Cink's right about your average player in this field. Zane Hoot's like a top 20 player, but they're below birdie or better percentage players. They're not aggressive players. Last year, Zane Hoot was number 147 on tour, tied for 147th in terms of birdie or better percentage, which is, far from elite for somebody of his caliber. And then Stewart Cink was right around 100 himself. So both of these players, a little bit more conservative, play smart golf, kill a course with their consistency a lot more than the birdie or better production. And with the average at 3.6 birdies last year, with a 2 under average, right, playing easy, I mean, we're going to see a birdie or better average of maybe like 2.7 to 3 tomorrow. That's honestly what I would expect. Both par 5s are going to be really easy birdie holes, but outside of that, almost every other hole is going to play significantly more difficult. And then you have 2 guys that aren't aggressive to begin with, like just, yes, please, right? Let me get to them. Russell Knox was the same way. Same thing with Webb Simpson. I mean, let me see. Any guy here that's going off in the morning, right? So let's point out Matt Kuchar. Tom Hoagie, not so much. I'd like Hoagie this week, so I probably wouldn't fade him. But like a Billy Horschel, I mean, even a Jordan Spieth at 5 up there, these are all guys that you could consider fading. I would be okay with any of them. Next prop I like is actually an over. So it's the one over on the slate that I'm even playing. It's for a PM wave guy. And kind of like I said, I don't want to count on the PM wave guy. So that's the only prop I'm taking in this wave for an over is going to be Corey Connors. And it's because he's at 9 fairways hit. The average last year was like 9.2. Corey Connors is an elite accuracy driver. An elite. He's like a top 10, top 15 driver in terms of accuracy year in and year out. And he's also relatively long off the tee. So the fact that he's playing in the PM wave, which might be easier, I don't even think it has to be easier for him, because in neutral conditions, he would project for closer to 10.5, maybe even 11 fairways at this golf course, giving him a ton of push potential there at 9 fairways, if not to go over if the wind conditions drop off. So I still like the Corey Connors over, but where I really think there's a lot of value here on some of these matchups. So there's a Sungjae matchup here and a Corey Connors one. So this would also be an over for Connors. This would be an over for Sungjae M. Both of these players, Sungjae and Connors, go off in the PM wave, right? Which might be easier than the morning, right? It might be. We'll leave it out there. There's debate there, right? It might not end up falling off. It probably will, but it might not. They're going against guys that are in the AM wave, right? Emiliano Grillo and Russell Henley. These 2 players are also inferior players to the guy's picture. Like Sungjae M is, in my opinion, the second best player in this field behind Tom Kim. Absolutely love him this week. I've already bet him outright. He's my top outright pick of the week, considering odds, pricing, all that sort of fun stuff. Going against Rio, who's aggressive. He's a decent player when he's on his game, but he's extremely inconsistent. Sanjay's going to hit the over here 65, maybe 70% of the time on a neutral site, let alone when you factor in the weather here, right? Which could be a huge factor on this slate between the two waves. Love Sanjay's over. Same thing with Corey Connors. Now, the gap between the skill sets aren't quite as wide here, right? Like Connors is, let's say, a top like 40 player on tour, top 30 player probably. 40 might be a little bit disrespectful. In fact, 30 might even be a little bit disrespectful, but he's up there in that top echelon. Somebody like Henley's in that top 50. So it's not like you're talking about a top 25 player versus somebody that's right around like 50 to 75 on tour. But there's a good skill set gap. And then you're also looking at the fact between the waves, right? Connor's a PM golfer. You have Russell Henley teeing off in the AM wave. So another over I would take. And what I like about these is when you take one of these matchups, it washes away the multiplier. So if we didn't have Sanjay M here, you can see it would pay 5x, right? But if you just took two unders, you would get penalized for only having those two. So if we wanted to get back to a normal payout, we could add Sanjay M here and then get it back up to the 5x payout. It essentially washes away the multiplier, gives you that ability to enter a normal card while still having some of the correlation in it. Which is what I'm going with here. So these are a few of the props I'm taking. I pointed out a few others that made sense, but for fairways, it's priced pretty appropriately, I'd say. There's only, a few pieces of value I could see, and Corey Connors definitely one of them. With greens and regulation, I want to say this. There's a lot of unders I would consider here. The only reason I'm not taking them is I don't know how receptive the golf course is. I mean, if it's going to play like an absolute sponge, that might make up for the fact that it's going to be super windy tomorrow. So I don't want to go in that direction just because of that fact. If it ends up playing like usual, a lot of the unders here for greens and regulation are most likely going to hit. So for guys playing in the morning, like a Jordan Spieth, that'd be a solid under. Billy Ho, pretty much anybody that's in the AM wave that's not an elite level iron player, like Webb Simpson comes to mind. Kuchar, Mazain, all of these sort of players. Stuart Sink's already down to 13, so you probably wouldn't want to fade that one. But a lot of the other props in here, just a ton of value on these unders. And like I said, if you just wanted to take all unders, I'm just going to click these at random, okay, guys? It's not like I'm picking these for any specific one reason. Look at this. 5 one direction, right, is only going to pay you 5x. Look what happens when I add Sanjay M here. I add Sanjay M, you go back to a 25x payout for the 6x, right? Right back to what you're used to seeing. That's the beauty, is by just correlating these, and you could take all of one prop. You could take all birdie or better unders, right? We can go over here. Take the Jordan Spieth one I was talking about. Let's put these in here. Bazane, Stuart Sink. Who else can we add in? We can add in Kuchar here. And let's add Horschel. All of these guys under that are playing in the AM wave tomorrow. And then go over here to Sanjay M down here. Put him over. Look at this, 25x payout, right? Like, that's the beauty of getting to these matchups. And I hate matchups typically, but if you're going to tell me we're going to get players in different waves versus each other, so we're actually going to have a tangible advantage to go off of, not just based on the talent gap, then I'm going to be all over those sort of props. So those are the kind of cards that I'm going with, the kind of props that I'm playing. Like I said, all of the actual props in the write-up I'm taking are going to be on the Patreon page. So make sure to check that out if you're looking for everything I have to offer. But that's all I've got for this video, guys. Make sure you smash that like button before getting on out of here. I appreciate all the support, you guys stopping by, enjoying the content, supporting the channel. Best of luck with all of your slips, any DFS lineups if you're playing over there on Draftkings as well. It should be a really fun weekend. It's a golf course we've seen for quite some time. There's a wide range of players that could win this event, right? In terms of skill set, you could have a bomber win it, you could have a shorter player win it. So I'm expecting it to be a highly contended event. So that should be fun to see as well. And hopefully we can line our pockets with some extra cash as well during the process. That would just make it all that much better. So like I said, best of luck, and I will catch you guys next time.